I am very pleased to be joined for this panel by Reverend Angela Khabeb and Reverend Joann Conroy, both of whom you saw in our film. And I am going to just ask each of you to introduce yourselves in your own words, give whatever context to your profession, your personal life that you care to offer.
Thanks, Jim Bear. I appreciate that. My name's Angela Khabeb, and I serve at Holy Trinity Lutheran Church in South Minneapolis. It was ground zero during the uprising right by the 3rd Precinct, and so our doors were propped open all day, all night during the uprising. So we were like a makeshift clinic, and then afterwards a food distribution center. Maybe some of you came to volunteer during that summer. Yeah, so right now, I don't know, am I going to just keep on talking, or should I go ahead and pass the mic? That's the thing. I mean, they gave me a mic. I'm a preacher. I mean, what? Are you okay down there? Should we just introduce ourselves? We'll come back.
I'm really glad to be here. Thank you, Jim Bear, for asking me. Good to see you, Angela. Good to see all of you. I'm Pastor Joann Conroy. I was born and raised on the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota. I'm the youngest of 5, and it was really fun being the baby. I get away with a lot in my growing up years. My tribal name is Wiya Wakan. Wakan meaning holy and Wiya meaning woman. It was a name given to me by my grandmother when I was about 13. She tells the story of a great-grandmother of mine. And if you've ever been with Jim Bear on his tour, and my daughter Kelly tells the story, that's the grandmother she's talking about. But I'm also president of American Indian Alaska Native Lutheran Association for the ELCA nationwide. And for the last 9 years, I've been chaplain at Good Samaritan Society Sanford Health in Maplewood. And then I just do a lot of things.
So, you said this is the first time you've seen this movie.
I can't remember. Maybe I just haven't seen that.
That's the nature of a movie star. You can't keep track of what you're in, right?
You've got a lot of things going on. I'm always running around doing all the things, so I'm sure we watched this at our church. I'm sure we did. I'm sure we did. I'm positive.
So, both of you are clergy in the ELCA, which is undeniably the whitest denomination in the country. That's just stating fact, just stating the truth.
This is a Methodist church.
This is a Methodist church.
This is the whitest damn room I have ever been in in my life.
We'll get there.
That got on the
Yeah.
recorded.
Okay.
My goodness.
Angela, one thing you said in the movie,
I just get a kick out of myself sometimes.
I know you do.
I just get a kick out of my own self, and I don't care what you think. I just get a kick out of my own jokes. Oh. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm going to behave like starting.
No, you're on the clock now. Angela, one of the things you said in the movie, and this ties into, we all lived through this era recently of color blindness, and God doesn't see color and all this, and this push towards reconciliation. But early in the movie, you said that when we focus only on what makes us the same, it denies the fact that our lives indeed are not the same, and we live very different lives. And I'm wondering if you want to take a moment just to kind of expand on that, because there is this push, right, to push past our differences and focus on what makes us the same. And we think that that makes us good Christians because we're avoiding conflict.
And when we say that, there's, you know, this is what I do in the morning. I get up at 7 o'clock, well, earlier than that, but I start watching TV and I watch Good Morning America at 7 o'clock. And I love Robin Roberts. And she will say from time to time, you know, we're more alike than we are different. We're more alike than we are, we have more in common than we have, and it makes me cringe. And when we say that, the subtext is different is bad. And that's not true. We can be completely different and still love each other. We can be completely 100% different on all the points. I mean, if you stick me and my husband and we start checking the boxes, we are so opposite on so many things, you know? But we've been married 21 years now. It's not about us all being white. And people are so white, and there's nothing wrong with being white. I need to start saying that more often. There's nothing wrong with being white. Clearly, you guys love it. Jeez Louise. I'm a white and I'm Jesus. I'm a white and I'm Jesus. I'm a white Jesus. Everywhere. My God. I mean, this is a lot. I think I'm going to need to just take a video of this room. This is a lot of whiteness. This is a lot. Like I'm swimming in it. And I am in the whitest denomination in the United States. And I am like struck by this. Like I need like a counselor after this or something. This is a lot. So anyway, okay, what are we talking about?
I think you did.
Should I give you back the microphone? You probably just
Okay.
come up to Oh, I know.
Okay.
So one thing that I'm starting to do, the older I get, you know how it is. The older you get, the more it's like, I'm just going to say what it is I want to say. And so now that I'm 50, I just say what it is I want to say. And I just go for it because it's like, why am I, after all of these years and all of the things that I've been through, the suffering, when it's time for me to say things, I say at the church, it's a very progressive church, probably one of the most progressive churches in the Twin Cities, and I cannot tell you the number of microaggressions that I suffer every damn day. So much so that I've been on a 6 weeks medical leave. This is the first thing I've ever done in public for 6 weeks. Because I thought on Memorial Day weekend, I thought I was having a heart attack. Oh, Lord, listen to me. How much time do we, oh, they're going to throw me out. You're never going to invite me back. It's all right. I get that a lot. So I thought I was having a heart attack. And because people of color, the way we are treated in the medical arena, I said, I'm not going to the hospital. I'm just going to lay down. I'll feel better. And hours later, I still was feeling terrible. So I called a neighbor to come over and take me to the hospital because my husband was at some picnic in Wisconsin or something like that. And what I'm saying is there was my life. I thought I was dying, and I said, but to go to the hospital, they treat you terribly. Well, they don't treat you terribly. They treat me terribly. I'll tell this one last quick story, and I'll pass the mic, about being treated terribly in the medical. I've got a gazillion stories, but I'll tell you this one, which will sum it up very easily. When, in 2005, my husband and I were expecting our first child, but she was born early and still. And when I had to labor, I don't know if you know this, but if the baby is beyond 20 weeks, you have to labor for that baby. I did not know this. It was a hard time to learn that. And I was denied an epidural. They tortured me in there. They let me labor all night for a baby I knew was already dead. And that anesthesiologist just flatly refused. He just flatly refused to give me.
So, Pastor Joann, one One thing that was brought up in the film that really made me think of you, a gentleman named Dominic Gillard equated the church's unwillingness to sit under indigenous leadership is not ministry at all, but it's just a manifestation of colonization. You are one of the very few indigenous leaders, not even just within the ELCA, but within Christianity writ large. You're one of the very few indigenous leaders, and I'm just wondering if you have any comments or ways in which you have combated colonization and really tried to not only live into what it is to be Indian, but to be a minister of Christ as a Native woman.
Oh dear, that's a big question. Well, so the family my family, of course, we're Oglala Sioux Native Americans. We were raised in the Episcopal Diocese of South Dakota in the Niobrara Diocese, which is the diocese that oversees Native ministries in South Dakota, North Dakota, Minnesota. And we belong to the Episcopal Church. We were raised in the Episcopal Church. And then at home, we were who we were. We were Indian people. We celebrated who we were by living those values in our home. I thought, growing up in church and in my home, the way I was brought up, that that's how Christianity was. It was like us, who we were as Indian families. I thought that's what Christianity was, and I loved church. So when I was about 8, 9, or 10, I can't remember, I was in the church with my mom and some friends, and they were cleaning, and one of them asked me, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I said, "I want to be a priest." And they giggled and they laughed because women weren't allowed to do that anyway, and then they giggled and they laughed because natives weren't priests. There were one or two maybe, but for the most part, natives weren't priests. It wasn't until my 30s that actually happened, and I had that call to become a pastor, a native pastor. So I was the first native pastor for the ELCA in South Dakota. It's not an easy trip. It is not an easy trip. I grew up on the Pine Ridge Reservation, and the denominations there were the Presbyterian Church, Presbyterian USA, the Catholic Church, the Episcopal Church, and there was another really small denomination that was a house church. But we all knew one another, and we all came together, and that was the communities that I grew up in. But once I left the reservation, Christianity had an ugly face, and I found myself not being welcomed. How in the world God decided that I was to be this ordained Native woman? I don't know, but He did, and I am, and it's a hard journey. There are very few of us throughout the United States. And I think in the beginning, I tried to be a good Christian. I tried to be like my colleagues, my white colleagues, and it didn't fit and it didn't work. And I remember when I was first assigned to a church, actually I was a developer, so there wasn't actually a church, I had to develop it. And I was at a meeting, this was in South Dakota, this was in the Lutheran Church ELC, and I was at a meeting of pastors that came together every so often, and one of the pastors, and this was a large gathering, probably about 3 times the size of what's sitting here tonight. One of the pastors came walking through the sanctuary, a woman pastor, calling my name, and as I walked in, she said, "We just came back from the assembly, and I just want you to know that you are our token Indian. We're sending you to the National Assembly as our token Indian." I stopped dead in my tracks, and I could just feel the fire just... I looked at her and I said, "I'm nobody's token. Never will be, never have been," and I walked out of the meeting. Well, the bishop then started contacting me and wanting to send me materials to go to the National Assembly. I sent them back. And they called me and they said, you've been elected to go and represent us. And I said, "I'm not going, but you have to go." And I said, and I told him what happened, and I just told the bishop, "I'm not your token. You're not sending me. I won't be a voice for this synod." And I wasn't. Later on, she told someone she learned a big lesson. I hope she did. And that continues today. I've been asked, how can you be a pastor and be Native? And it makes me really mad. During that fire starts again. And when I was in seminary in I think it was a Greek class, every morning we started with prayer, and the professor would call on a student to pray. And one morning she called on me to pray, so I stood up because, that's our tradition. When we pray, you stand, and I stood up and I offered a prayer. She walked up to me and she said, "That's very interesting. When did you become a Christian?" And I looked at her and I was kind of dumbfounded. I was embarrassed and I was upset, and I just said, "Well, I guess when I was born." And they had me baptized. And then those things continue all the time. In my first call, congregation, I would sing in the Sioux language. I'd pray in the Sioux language. I'd sing the hymns we were singing. I would just sing them in my language, and people would walk up to me and say, "I didn't know you could do that. I didn't know you could sing these hymns in your language. I didn't know you could pray these prayers in your language." And then in the last year, I was on a Zoom meeting with the National Church, and you all are going to be the first to hear this because you just are. But I was on a Zoom meeting with the National Church, our national bishop, and a lot of her staff, and we had a disagreement about an issue or something, and I was on the losing side, but I was still giving my opinion as to why we should do the other. And the bishop finally spoke up, and she said, "Joann, you know what the white man wants, the white man gets." My bishop, national bishop, said that. So I haven't attended another meeting with her in over a year's time. I get a lot of invitations, I just don't go. I could go on and on, but so that's, it's difficult to be a pastor, to be a Christian. How can I be a Christian? Because this is what I know. Jesus called me through the church. All of these horrible things that have happened to my people and all people of color and ethnic people happened because of other people and human beings. Jesus doesn't call people to harm people, to do those things that have been done to us. So that's how I can be a Christian, because I believe in Christ. Christian pastor.
I was going to pick up on something that was happening in the room while Pastor Joann was speaking. When she talked about offering prayers in her language and songs in her language, hymns in her language, and being met with that ignorance that I didn't know you could do that in your language. There was a lot of laughter in the room, and that's fine, that's understandable, because it seems on the surface like such idiocy, right? But as Indigenous people, this is our reality. This is our reality every day. We have elders in our communities that will not speak their Indigenous language because they were told from very young children that that was the devil's language. This is a battle we fight in language reclamation. So I don't want to condemn the laughter that took place on that, but I just want to re-emphasize where that stems from. Where we look in the 21st century and we think, of course, well, why wouldn't you be able to translate a hymn into Lakota or Mohican? Why wouldn't you, right? But we could not speak our Indigenous languages until 1978, legally. We could not practice our Indigenous spirituality until 1978. We grew up, I'll speak for myself, I am only now, as a middle-aged adult, learning my Mohican language, because for the previous X number of generations before me, we were told not only that the Mohican language was not useful, but we were told that it was openly demonic. This is what we're battling. So don't take the, I'm reacting to the laughter. Don't take it as a condemnation, because I admit that is an asinine, stupid question. Oh, I didn't know you could pray in your language, right? But there's a history to that. There's a history to the absurdity. And that history is deep, very, very deep. Angela, in the film, one thing that struck me was towards the end, when the narrator is recounting the birth of the African Methodist Episcopal Church. She says that the founders left the church because it wasn't their church, but it was a white church that they were allowed to attend. And they left and created something new. And you pastor a church where openly all are welcome, right? Everybody's welcome.
Yes.
If you drive by the marquee of Hennepin Avenue United Methodist Church, very often you'll see all are welcome.
But you gotta look real close. There's
I see. But I don't remember who said it, but they said there's a profound difference between all are welcome and this space was created for you, or this space was created with you in mind. I'm going to guess that your church that you pastor, you don't feel was created for you. And my question is, where and how do you find spiritual comfort, spiritual food, where you feel was created for you?
I don't know why this man's trying to get in my business in front of all these people. I'm just like, what am I doing in this denomination? Really, I'm asking myself that a lot lately. It's like my children are clapping on the 1 and the 3. Lord, they can't dance. They embarrass me at the family reunions. They don't know anything about the Black church experience, because there's only one way to have the Black church experience. It's by attending a Black church. And like some of the sermons that I hear, the Jesus that white people need. I don't know who said it in the video, But when you have everything that you need, when you come to God, you don't really need anything from God. You know, I mean, a little forgiveness, some mercy, a little bit. But I need deliverance. You know, I need a God that's active. You know, be present with me in the suffering. Shit, help me. I need a God that's active. And so there's that. Did I say shit in front of y'all? Y'all know I don't have good sense. In the house of God. There's more to come. Stay tuned. So I wanted to apologize for laughing. I didn't, mean to, but I'm goofy. And that should be evident. And it's also a way of coping with some of this painful things. I can find humor in it. Either I'm laughing or I'm crying. You know, that's the choice that I sometimes feel. And for that spiritual renewal, it's not happening for me. And I need to, my brother just called me out on it, but it's not happening. And I need to be more diligent about that. But I wanted to say something. Okay, check this out. Racism could be really humorous. It really can. Should we take a temperature of the room? Or do we care what they think? Should we check in? I always check in. I always take a temperature of the room, see how folks are doing, because somebody could have a burning question in their heart. And they will go home and they'll say, I didn't get to ask my burning question. This crowd is not a burning question crowd. So I'm going to keep talking. But you just shoot up your hand. I mean, if there's something that, there we go. I knew there was.
In your Lutheran church, does your service follow a traditional Lutheran format?
Oh my gosh. Oh, no. Let me tell you. You see that picture right there? Boom. That's Holy Trinity. In fact, let me tell you something. So we were talking about changing the stained glass windows, but this conversation precedes me. They've been talking about this for a decade. I came 2018. I'm from Omaha, Nebraska originally, from Omaha, Nebraska. Good people are from Nebraska. Anybody from Nebraska? Hey, Omaha, Nebraska. Nebraska is a great place. And what I was going to say about humor is my sisters have written this, in November, their second book is coming out. New York Times bestseller. They're writing another book about funny stories about racism. It's just one of our coping mechanisms. I got like a whole chapter in there. True story. I'm just saying, you could end up in one of these books. But like that right there with the language, oh, I didn't know you could. Anyway, what am I talking about? Any ideas? I had a very important salient point that I was going to make. Oh, about the church. Okay. So I serve with Ingrid Rasmussen. She's the senior pastor. I'm an associate pastor. And she's white. Did you know that? Ingrid Rasmussen. And then there's me. And I was called, when I was called to that church, I was told that I could be my authentic self. You see stupid on my forehead right here? Yeah. So, the stained glass windows. Okay. So, taking out the white Jesus in the stained glass windows. This is one of the most progressive churches in Minneapolis, Lutheran churches. These progressive white people who have marched with Dr. King, they love to tell me that, lost their shit. You hear me? I'm telling you that if you are going to dismantle white supremacy, white Jesus is a load-bearing wall. You touch white Jesus, baby, the whole house will come down. I was like, you know what? They're not. And my husband would tell me, Angela, they aren't your windows. They aren't your windows. If they don't want to change them, just put it in the book. So one of these old retired, we got 30 retired pastors in our congregation. 30. They mostly behave, mostly. There's a couple that do not play well, And one of them wrote a 20-page apologia about why we cannot change the stained glass windows. And the leadership was on the fence about whether or not we should put it up. I said, hell yeah, put it up there. Everybody needs to see that I live with that. He doesn't say this 20-page apologia, but I can feel it. I know by looking. Mama Joe, you know what a racist looks like, don't you? You know that look, the feeling, Okay, so in his apology, I tried to read some of it. Why did I try to do that? Oh, it just hurt me more. So in it, he says the true people who are oppressed are the Native Americans because of the doctrine of discovery. And I was like, don't do that, man. Don't do that. Don't pit me against, don't do that. Don't do that. And this, did I tell you, this is one of the most progressive. So I've had a lot of time talking with my therapist. I'm like, where am I supposed to go? Because when I go to a black church, then sometimes I have to deal with all of the sexism that comes out. Let a woman keep silent in the church. Boy, they quote that Paul scripture so quickly on me. And it's like, how can I be quiet? On that note.
Well, I can tell you they don't take kindly to natives calling out their artwork either. There's a church, a downtown congregation, that a number of years ago, I inadvertently fell into a controversial discussion on their artwork. They had this embroidery that was huge. I'm talking probably 40 feet long, 15 feet high. You're nodding. You're familiar with it? So, okay. Their fall tapestry was a celebration of the first Thanksgiving and all of the mythological stereotype. I made a comment on it, inadvertent comment, and it led to this whole process, right? Now, this church is probably the most progressive church in their denomination, very historic downtown congregation. They fired their founding pastor because he was not anti-slavery enough, okay? He was not pro-slavery, but he was an abolitionist, but he was not abolitionist enough for their taste. You talk about your congregation march with Dr. King. This congregation, they're like, we fired our founding pastor because he was not anti-slavery enough, right? The discussion over a piece of artwork almost split the church. And I don't mean that facetiously. They have a 160-year history. The only issue that has ever been forced to a congregational vote was the tapestry. You think about all the issues this congregation faced in 160 years, okay? Ordaining women, civil rights, LGBTQ issues, ordaining gay, queer, identifying people. The only thing that almost split the church was a celebration of whiteness in artwork. Now, it's been brought up. I want you to think about, and I offer this particularly for folks who may be members of this particular church. I want you to think about what it means that for the last 3 months, we have brought in 4 different women of color into this space as guests. I have had a conversation with each and every one of them prior saying, just to warn you, this is the space you're coming into. Because I remember the first time I came into this space many years ago to show a film and have a discussion about the doctrine of discovery, about the ways in which white supremacy sits on native bodies. And it's in this space. And I'm only bringing this up because before we planned all of this, I asked of your senior leadership, I asked, what if this gets personal? Can your congregation handle it? And I was told, yes, you can have these conversations. I know that this room, these images of white Jesus, has been an issue for at least 2 decades in this church. This year is not the first time this church has heard that this is an issue, to bring people of color into this space. And I'm not criticizing the artwork. These are beautiful, beautiful paintings. But my issue here, my issue at the church that almost split, the church is not an art museum. The church is the house of God. And you can put on your marquee that all are welcome, but when I come into this space, it tells a different story. And I feel like I just pulled the pin on a hand grenade, but listen, we're not going to, Soon Chan Ra said, maybe it's time to have the funeral, right? Maybe it's time to have the funeral.
Yeah, words can't describe it.
Yeah.
When you told me that I would be in a room with a lot of white Jesus, this is beyond what I could even imagine. I thought, oh yeah, I know the one. And he's not even here. You know, the one where he's like, ooh, and the light is coming down. But this is oppressive. This is heavy. This is oppressive. This is saying, this is the message that I'm getting from this artwork. It is the N-word. That's all I see when I look around. That's all I see when I look around. I just see, you are a nigger. That's what I see when I look at all this. It is very oppressive, and that's how I feel when I'm in here. I feel like I'm going to say it again just because it makes you uncomfortable, so I'm going to say it again because I've been uncomfortable for a very long time in this room. It just says nigger, 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 nigger. You point to all of them. That's what it says to me while I'm sitting in here. It sends a very hateful message. I know it's intended to be glorious, but it's hateful. And that's how these walls look to me. And I'm only speaking for myself. But I'm just saying this is a very painful room. And we don't, now I'm saying we, I don't have a safe church. And I should, in all the places, like when we send our kids to school, they should be safe at school. And when I go to a house of worship, whatever religion, you should be able to worship in peace. And this is not peace. This is the direct opposite. Did I put too fine a point on it? This is oppressive in this space. I just wanted to, words can't describe it. I thought 3 pictures. Oh, well, I noticed something.
Okay.
There's a hand back there. Am I bothering it? Am I messing up the things? I don't want to get in trouble.
Go into
Okay.
Q&A.
I've been around this church for a number of years. And when I first came to this church back in the 60s, at that point there had just been an occurrence in this church in which the pastor had invited Border Church, which was a black church, to join his congregation. And there were all kinds of issues around that. But I
Mm-hmm.
which was black. And the minister, the lead minister here, Chester Pennington, invited the Border Church to join. And yes, a great many of the congregation that were here then, especially the powerful ones, left. So the church went through that. But because I grew up in the South, and I mean, I will just lay that out there because I came from a family that we were constantly at each other. And I consider myself pretty liberal, and I'm trying to understand so many of these things. That's why I'm here. And so when we came to this church and that had happened, and we were witnessing the new life members, it was hard, very hard on my mother. My father and me, not so much. So my point is that I always looked to that history as kind of laying some of the groundwork for the openness of this church, and that's what I've always appreciated. So I don't know if you want to comment on that.
Right. Well, I don't think any of us are denying the openness of Hennepin Avenue. Hennepin Avenue is, I mean, I'll just name it. It's the flagship congregation of the United Methodist Church in the state of Minnesota. They, you know, I'm not Methodist, so I'm not self-aggrandizing here. Hennepin Avenue is lifted up as the flagship church for all of the right reasons. But even the flagships have things that need to be worked on. They have difficult conversations that need to take place. And right, and what I'm saying, I'm not saying destroy the paintings, I'm not saying hide the paintings. I'm saying the church is not the house of holding history. If I come to your church as a native person, dressed in my traditional regalia, on any given Sunday, I would be invited to participate in the Lord's Supper at your altar. Right? Yes. So this is the sitting room of the house of God. It's decidedly less inviting. Okay. Questions? Yep. Yeah. And believe me, I'm not here to just harp on Hennepin UMC. This is a conversation I've had in multiple churches across all of your white Anglo-Saxon Protestant denominations. Because this white Jesus and our attachment to white Jesus is one of the most blatant, crippling downfalls of American Christianity. Yeah.
You know, I wanted to say something about my congregation being very progressive. And this is my first time ever being at this church. I am, like I said, from Omaha, Nebraska. I lived in Nebraska, Chicago. Where was I at before I was here? I was in Wisconsin, in Waukesha, Wisconsin, but I called it Waukesha, and they said, no, it's not Waukesha. I said, well, I went to school with a girl named Waukesha, so, you know, I might be saying it right. Maybe y'all got it. Anyway, so what point was I going to make? Oh, I was going to say that our church, about the housing, when we talk about the housing disparity, we had this windfall from selling a property. I mean, like $5 million, huge money. And we were shocked that we would get all this money. So because the money came from affordable housing, then we wanted to put a certain percentage of that back in the community, back in the actual church building. You know, it's old, it has fallen in disrepair. And one of the things that the church did, that Holy Trinity did, in September, they paid cash for a house in Longfellow, because, you know, the housing market is just brutal out there. They paid cash to take that house off the market and then sold it to me and my family at a price that we could afford and chalked the difference up to reparations. And I want to also say, this is the crazy thing. Did I ever tell you this, Jimper? That the time leading up to it was so stressful for me that I got a second therapist. So like I was cheating on my main therapist. So I had like this therapist. So I had like a side piece therapist, but she knew she was my side piece. I was like, you know, I have a real therapist. You just my chick on the side. Because it was so stressful for me to put my family and trust these white people. Can you imagine? It was so stressful for me. And I kept saying to Pastor Ingrid, I said, Ingrid, this is just too good to be true. It's like I've won the lottery. And she said, you have. You won the reparations lottery. But I'm just saying, even that incredible blessing, how much internalized racism that was going on inside of me. Just from that beautiful thing, how I'm still keeping my side piece there. I like her too. We got a hand. We'll start with Mom Jo.
Thank you, everybody. I want to, well, go ahead. Go. Did you have a, oh, okay. Thank you for that. And I hear that. I hear you. And those are very true and sincere comments. But as a Native woman, as a Native person, my differences aren't always welcomed by non-Native or white Christian people. The expectation is, in my life, and I'm 73, so in my lifetime, the expectation is that I need to believe in Jesus the way that person believes in Jesus. I need to know Jesus the way that person knows Jesus. And that would be the white teaching that you saw here in the video, the white European Jesus. That's not reality for us. I'm sorry, it's just not reality. I am a Christian person. I know Christ, but that is not my reality. And I have, in being a Christian pastor, a Lutheran pastor, I have many colleagues who are white, but I have friends who are part of congregations. Most of the congregations, except for the one that I established and built, are all white. In my experiences as a pastor, as a person. So those are, that would be like, for me, the dream reality of what Christianity should be. All of our differences don't make a difference, but all of our differences do make a difference because Christ created us as different people. Christ gave us different languages and customs and values and norms. Not Christ, God. And he made us different for a reason, for all the gifts that we bring to the table. And we should never, ever, we meaning ethnic people, brush those under the rug so that we can be like the white Christian. And I really don't like saying that word all the time because it feels like I'm pointing fingers, but I don't know what other word to use, so I apologize. But, you know, in Christ's eyes, we are all the same. In our human eyes, we're not, even in our churches. But that's not, I was just trying to answer you real quickly. And I haven't been being rude and looking at my phone while they were speaking. I wanted to share this with you, and it goes back to the doctrine of discovery that is alive and well in the lives of Native people in this land. And I'm sure it's in other lands, but in the United States of America, our lives are still ruled by this. So in North Dakota, this just happened 2 days ago. Tribes in North Dakota saw a big win in the federal court. A federal judge in Fargo denied the state's motion to throw out a lawsuit brought by the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa Indians. The lawsuit claims the state's new legislative districts infringed upon Native voting rights. And the judge threw that lawsuit out. So every 10 years, you know, they redistrict and redraw those lines. Many states are doing this and taking away the votes of ethnic people and people of color. What this judge said was, or what the challenge from the tribe says, that the underrepresentation hurts tribes, but it hurts the state. Diversity of thought, diversity of background, having tribal members with their diversity of experience in the legislature makes tribes stronger, but it also makes the state stronger. So that was one of the arguments of the North Dakota tribes. But that's nice to hear. But this is what I want you to hear, because it's like a knife in the heart of all of Indian people. Al Jaeger, the Secretary of State of North Dakota, challenged this lawsuit, and this is what he said. He asked the judge to dismiss the lawsuit, says that they meaning the tribes lack any standing in the court because tribal people are not legal citizens of the United States. This was 2 days ago. This is what we live with. And my daughter took my 10-year-old grandson to a church, an ELCA church camp in North Dakota, and I am afraid for her to drive through that state. She tries to laugh me off and say, well, we'll be okay, but I told her, don't you stop anywhere to get gas that isn't a big gas station. Don't stop any place. Just go straight there. I am really fearful of that state, but the Secretary of the state made these statements in the court, and now they're part of the court record. In my father's life, my father was a World War II Navy War veteran, and he was 30 years old before he was a citizen of these United States. That happened just before World War II. It wasn't until after World War II that Native Indian women became citizens of the United States. So we were wards of the country. We were non-human people of this government. And those things underlie who we are as Native people and how we're treated by the federal government, the state government, and county governments. And this just happened in North Dakota.
In the back there?
I'm just curious to know how those of you who are, and you're all ministers, how do you in your sermons or in your education within your congregations, how do you bridge that gap between the understanding of
So once upon a time, some years ago, when I was a pastor developer developing a native congregation for the South Dakota Synod of the ELCA, we inherited a church because that congregation moved out, built a new church, and we inherited this building to develop a congregation for Native peoples in Rapid City. And 10 people would come to church, and they were all white. They were local, people in the community. So I would go door to door to all the Native families I could find, and I knew I would get this reaction because I've done it myself in my lifetime. You have a churchy person knocking on your door, wanting to talk about Jesus, and you get this really polite smile, and they let you say what you have to say and shut the door. But I kept doing it. It was kind of embarrassing to me because I'm Native and they're Native, and they're looking at me like, what are you doing? But anyway, I did it. So then my cousin was ordained as an Episcopal priest 2 blocks down from the church I was developing, and so he and I started we started a scripture study, Bible study, and we were sitting in the fellowship hall, well, not really a hall, but in the room, and the door opens, and I could hear 2 people walking back to where we were, and in walks a Native couple, this man and this woman, and he says to me, my name is so and so and so and so, and this is my wife, blah, blah, blah. He said, I heard that you're having a Bible study. He said, and I came to sit in on your Bible study, but I want you to know, and he, like this, on the Bible as hard as he could, I do not believe in that book. But this is what I knew. I knew, he seemed to be the same age as me, that he was probably a boarding school survivor. And it wasn't that he didn't believe in Jesus. It was because that book was used to hurt him and his people, his family, whoever. So my cousin looked at me, and I looked at him, and I stood up, and I got them coffee, and I gave them a Bible, and I said, turn to Genesis 1, because this is something else I always know. God created everything. In the beginning, God created. And then I told him, so we are Old Testament people, as Native people in our faith, our beliefs. We are Old Testament people. We have a direct relationship with God. That's what the people of the Old Testament did. That's how they lived. That's who they were. They had a direct relationship with God. It was God and the people. Whatever God rained down on them, he rained down on them. Whenever he talked to them, he talked to them. Whenever he chewed them out, he chewed them out. It was God and the people. And then Jesus came. And then an old Indian told me, an elder told me one time, we were looking at this print of Jesuit priests standing over kneeling Indians. And I just really hate that picture, and a lot of Indians do. But anyway, we were looking at this, and he said, do you know why our people were able to believe in, accept, and embrace Jesus, the Christ? He said, it is because he was the Son. And there's no greater honor than being the Son. So when I preach, I preach in both languages, English and Sioux language. When I preach about the gospel, I relate it to the congregation I'm preaching to and my cultural traditions. And that's how I bring the message.
So we are slightly past our 8 o'clock cutoff time. Would you please give a thank you to our guests? We designed this program to lead up to this moment, a focus on racism and white supremacy within the church. We knew that this would potentially lead to some discomfort in this space, and we designed it to do so. Because here's what I want you to take away. Everyone in this room, just by the fact that you're here, everyone in this room will speak with hope and aspiration about reconciliation, about racial reconciliation. That's just in our nature. I'll include myself in that. We speak with hope and aspiration. The reality that we desperately need you to understand is that for white people, there is no pain-free path towards reconciliation. You do not get a pain-free path towards reconciliation. That's the reality. If we're going to do the work of God in God's eyes, true reconciliation, it's going to require pain, it's going to require times of lament. And that's what we leave you with. You cannot, even our most liberal, progressive, best churches cannot navigate a pain-free path forward in this. And so I make no apologies, and I'll be so bold as to speak for my colleague, Reverend Pam. We make no apologies about the discomfort that may be sitting in the room, because this is the work we're called to do. This is sacred work, and sacred work is never easy. So, with that, we thank you for sitting in the discomfort. We thank you for taking the discomfort home, for ruminating on it, for lamenting what you've encountered. And we offer our prayers as you navigate that through. So, thank you.